So the way that yoga was historically, going back to Patanjali's yoga, is very different from the yoga that we see today. And sometimes, and rightfully so, the distortion of that tradition is heavily placed, the blame is heavily placed on Westerners. And I want to try to hold an uncomfortable dialogue around this idea that in order for a tradition to stay alive, it needs to adapt. It needs to change. It needs to be fluid and alive, moving with the needs of the modern time, while simultaneously honoring the essence of that tradition. So when we see things like goat yoga, beer yoga, I don't know what other kinds of yogas there are, but this is not only an appropriation of a culture, but is a complete distortion of the essence of that tradition. Yoga itself is a tool within a path that is intended for self-realization, recognition of the absolute truth. So when we forget that essence, we're no longer adapting a tradition to the modern needs. We are appropriating. So let's talk about the difference. Originally, Patanjali's yoga, it had maybe 4 asanas. Yeah? And they were all seated postures intended specifically for meditation. And as we moved along through the history of yoga, we started to see more postures. And this was starting to include understandings of Shakti and Kundalini, and how when we hold the body in specific postures, it's going to awaken energy that is supportive and conducive for self-realization, including puppies, goats, beer in your yoga. I'm not going to say it cannot involve self-realization, but if it isn't consistently pointing back to that is the fundamental most important aspect of the practice, then it has become distorted. So what I'm trying to say is the adaptation and the change is necessary, but removal of the foundation, that essence of self-realization as being absolutely the most important thing, that's when we're distorting it. But this distortion is not alone on the Western culture. I've lived in India many times, and I have seen how Indians themselves, who have been raised within Hinduism, have also forgotten the essence and can also become hyper-focused on peak postures and the flexibility of the body. I am a person who practices a variety of paths within yoga. I enjoy the rituals, the mantra, the Sanskrit, and I think if we want to bring forward a tradition that isn't innately in our heritage and in our ancestry, then it is important that we familiarize ourselves with the customs that are associated with this. But to actually bring this tradition forward with integrity is involving more than just parroting Sanskrit and regurgitating philosophical understandings from the mind. We need to learn to not only embody the teachings, but to continuously bring all of the practices that we share back to that fundamental essence.